Mr. Passer. Good afternoon. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, virtually and in person. The Public Works Commission is holding this meeting on April 12th, 2023 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th, 2020. I ask that all Public Works Commissioners, town staff and presenters joining us via Zoom today to activate their video and mute their microphones unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting, public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise hand option in Zoom or use the *9 from your phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I, David DeLong, hereby call this meeting to order. We'll start with an attendance of the commissioners. If you're present, please let me know. James Terry.
Present.
Sven Weber.
Present.
Jeff Vassar.
Present.
Andrea Solomon.
Present.
Dave DeLong, present. Okay, start with reviewing and approving the minutes from the last meeting, review of the March 8th, 2023 Public Works Commission meeting. Any comments?
Yeah, I've got some nitpicks, okay?
Okay,
So
for a while.
start with page 2. Go to the paragraph D1. Fourth line down. The second last word, provide, cross it off. You know, we're ensuring that providing, okay?
Provide insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
That goes.
All right.
So that was just a
Yes,
duplicate.
right, right. Yep.
Okay, on page 3. On the paragraph that starts with staff also. The second last line. Noted that while the new leadership team has done.
Right.
Okay, next paragraph, second line. Plans are to propose an increase. So get rid of the D and add an and. These under D2, the second paragraph, first line. The word generate should be generated. And on page 4, under D3, Dave DeLong, is capital L under long. And on page 5, when he approves the minutes, we need a capital there also. So with those changes, I move that we approve the minutes of March 12th,
2023.
March 8th, 2023.
Any a second? Second. Vote of the commissioners. James Terry.
Aye.
Sven Weber.
Aye.
Jeff Vassar.
Aye.
Andrea Solomon.
Aye.
David DeLong. Aye. Okay, that does it for the minutes. Reviewing the calendar. Mr. Director.
We are anticipating, what's most important is town meeting is scheduled for April 30th, Sunday. And I hope you all have that on your radar. This is the final meeting that we'll have with the Public Works Commission before then. We anticipate a water sewer rate hearing in May. That will be advertised and posted very shortly. And we're also kind of on our radar in June, solid waste recycling rate hearing. At this point, it appears like if we, depending on needs, we like to take the summer off, where we take July, August reprieve, unless there is some imminent or real need, and we would then reach out to you with plenty of notice. We continue to target the second Wednesday of the month. We try to keep it, consistent with the second Wednesday at 4 p.m. So that's what's on our radar at this point.
Alan, we have the procedure that if we need to put in a water ban, you just talk with the chair and that gets done?
Excellent, Jim, yes, we can, in fact, maybe next meeting, we'll make that a point of sort of talking about water use. We'll be talking about the water rates. And I think it's a good time, Jim's reminding us that if there was a need for a declaration of a water emergency or ban, the chair is empowered to make that call with the recommendations from staff. And the reason is it allows for a very time sensitive response if there is a need, and that could be a result of we've lost a supply for unplanned reasons. Demands increase significantly, and I will just note that can happen early in spring. Everybody's very eager to get their new lawns ready and their gardens ready. So it's a supply demand question. And it could be just a need that we need to put a quick notice out. So if needed, we'd be reaching out to you, Dave, directly, and then we provide an update at the next meeting. The rest of the commission.
This chair person Solomon take over.
So we
Only
actually,
if we vote.
I want to know when I'm passing the buck.
we do have under, and I missed that, but it's on the list for the May meeting for election of the new officers. And that's generally when we have the ceremonies. It's a pretty significant event.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I get the big, like, going away present.
well, welcome to participating, not chairing.
So am I chairing the May meeting?
Yes,
To
you
begin
would,
with.
to begin with.
Okay. Oh, okay. Very good.
Commission members,
Yes,
unfortunately, I already know I have a conflict that day. I'm going to be out.
okay. Good to know and thank you, but that's why we have 5 members
And I'm away also.
and Jim is away as
So that
well.
means that
No, we can go wild.
You can go wild.
Yeah, really.
As long as we have 3 of the 5, we can have the meeting.
Okay. So review the calendar, no action required. Do we move on to item D1 on the agenda?
Mhm.
I'll let you.
All right, so we are looking at, yes, okay, the Transportation Advisory Committee. I want to sort of bring up Aaron Stevens, who is the newest staff member in the Planning and Land Management Group. Why don't you come up here so you'll be close to the speaker too, or in case people can hear you. We are very kind of excited to have this position in town. This has evolved over time where there's been lots of interests of transportation related activities that really are indirectly related to public works in many ways. But given some of the long range planning efforts and the Envision Concord interests and sort of the desire of the community to realize not just what we do in public work, which is sort of maintain and replace existing infrastructure, there's needs to really understand, well, what are the future needs and how are we really realizing transportation more comprehensively than roads and sidewalks and things like that. And so, Aaron, was willing to come and sort of present and at least, share with this commission sort of an introduction to, her role and responsibilities as it relates to the Transportation Advisory Committee. So with that, Aaron, if you would, like to take a lead, I can bring up and share a screen and bring up information if it's helpful.
Yeah, if we could bring up the, this one.
Let me get out of,
If you could just click on the back one, it'll bring it up.
there we go.
Perfect.
All right, okay.
So thank you all for having me today. I'm Erin Stevens. I'm a senior planner who works on transportation and mobility. And one of the things that, we're focusing on is sort of that, what is that next step? So I know that so much of what Public Works does is look at, let's repair, let's rebuild, let's fix things. And obviously there's never enough money to fix it all, but we also have to have an eye to the future. We know that things are changing. We know that people want to be more multimodal. people want to be able to walk and bike and take public transit whenever possible. And especially when we're looking towards our sustainability goals, that's incredibly important. So some of the things that the Transportation Advisory Committee is looking at is just how to do that. But we're also looking at doing a comprehensive transportation study. So that's what I'm going to start with. And then I also have the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee here with me, who can talk a little bit more to what the group is doing as a whole. Maybe one second slide. Perfect. So we're sort of taking it in 3 different sections. The first one is we're taking a comprehensive look at all the different things we've already done in town. So we've done Envision Concord, we've done the Sustainability Action Plan. We have our Complete Streets Priority List, which may not be perfect, but it's a starting point. So we have all these things that have already been done, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So let's take what we've done and build upon it. And that's what we're really looking to do with this. We want to take an in-depth look at where the sidewalks are. Does it just end and there's nothing to continue on? Or is there just a simple connection that we could make that could make this such a better connected area? Where are you looking to go when you're going from point A to point B? Are you looking to bring your kids to school? Are you looking to go to the grocery store, to work, wherever? Community engagement is a big part of that. We don't want this to be done in a vacuum and have people say, why are you deciding as the staff what's good for the community? We want this to be something that the community is involved in. And so we've asked, our RFP is out right now. We have asked them to come up with a community engagement plan, but we're also expecting them to come back with something that will be robust and we'll really be pushing for them to have those public forums, to have charrettes, to have sort of on the street, you know, you're on a bike, where are you going? kind of thing. And we really want to be finding and creating those connections to help people get where they want to go. Because as we know, many things have been car focused for a long time, and we're trying to make it so that people can get safely where they want to go in whatever mode they want to go within reason. Okay, so our timeline right now is our RFP is currently out. It is due back at the end of April. We're hoping to begin and have our contract in place at the beginning of May. Yes, May. And then we're going to begin with a community engagement and really looking at all those different pieces that I talked about, looking at what we already have here in town, where we are in terms of do we have a lot of these things kind of set up and can we just build upon them, or do we have to start from scratch? We're hoping to have that take about a year. It's going to be a big process and it's going to be very involved. And then we're going to be having our hopeful final report due in December with some milestones in between. It's supposed to take about 18 months all in all. So our goals, as you see here, we have quite a few of them, but we are hopeful that we will find a good consultant that will help us to get there. We want somebody who is going to be creative and innovative and not just going to say, let's plug and play what we've done for someplace else. One of the things that's really important to me is that we get a design guideline that is not just based on best practices, but is based on best practices with Concord in mind. So looking at, we have a historic town, we can't just take something from any old town around the country and apply it to Concord. It's a very specific and very interesting place, and we need to make sure that we are keeping that in mind. What else do we study here?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This organization how are you connected to town government or not? Are you totally separate? Where is your group
Sure.
sort of tie in?
So I'm within the planning department.
Okay,
I work frequently with Public Works. They can't get rid of me. But I work within the planning department.
okay. And but the group that
The
you're.
committee was appointed by the select board.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to wrap my mind around. So it's an independent or a task force almost, or a
I think it's a standing committee.
Yeah, it's evolved.
It's gonna be around forever.
Yeah, so what happened, what happened is there was, in a little background, it's kind of helpful context. There has historically been a traffic management group called TMG, which is composed of staff. And staff, the group is primarily dealt with identifying areas of needs or interests or, concerns that the community has on sort of clearing of right-of-ways, maintenance. But what happened is over time, there were more and more requests and inquiries on, can we get a crosswalk here or there, that
Yes.
sort of thing. So you started getting a list of needs, and that sort of evolved into the town looking at its streets more comprehensively. And so the town went through and Public Works took a lead on a complete street program. And this is a state program where if you follow certain protocols and systems and you become eligible, you get certified, you then get eligible for grant support because you've got a structure in place. And so interestingly enough, 3-4 years ago, we had a complete street plan. It was approved. We actually went forward and got some funding for some prioritized improvements. That was Sudbury Road, Hubbard Street, Palm Ave. And most of the players who were involved with the development of that plan are no longer working in Concord. And at the same time, we had the Envision Concord get complete, which identified more holistically some needs and interests. And so the town manager at the time identified the need that staff can't be the judge and jury of these interests. And basically, a lot of these things are driven by availability of funding and resources. And so he had convened a working group, which included primarily staff. And it was to try and say, it's not really TMG, but the town manager's office is going to take a lead in this. And then that sort of evolved to the point where the select board decided this is important. We don't want staff taking the lead and the town manager being sort of the chair. We think this merits its own committee. And so now we have a volunteer committee of various stakeholders and interests in the community to manage these issues, to help, sort of direct the town. And there's a mission statement, and I think I may have provided it. You can go online and see that. But there's a lot of responsibility. So the staff position was created to support this committee, as well as coordinate with other town departments, like, a lot with the engineering division. So it allows for a vetting of these community interests. So it's not just staff, there's now a committee involved. And I think this whole program of revisiting not just complete streets, but transportation is driven by the town's desire to realize things that we're not seeing. And it's well beyond the role and responsibility of Public Works. And so that's why, we're a partner, and it's really important that we sort of work closely with Aaron and Aaron works closely with us. And there'll be those opportunities where there may be initiatives or interests where TAC or Transportation Advisory Committee may have some thoughts, ideas. We talk about needs to coordinate with other committees. That's one that will probably be a lot of coordination over the years, I would expect. So on any event, that's a little background.
That was actually my question, because this study will be for 18 months.
Roughly.
The planning board is doing a parking study that supposed to be done earlier, and they want to make changes to the parking ratio next town meeting. So that would be before this one is done.
Correct.
In addition, there are things about doing zoning changes and other changes to increase density in certain areas of the town. I'm just thinking, like, are these silos, or are you bringing, in the end, is this brought together? Because this is already on a timeline later than other events.
Yeah.
But they can't be, it's a chicken and egg situation here.
Yeah, so we discussed specifically, because I'm also working on the parking and the looking at the zoning for that.
Yeah.
And what we were discussing was that this is more looking at it holistically, looking at the multimodal, trying to find those connections, right? The parking in particular is looking at this business wants to open, it says that they are required to have 30 parking
Yeah.
spaces, right? But they're going to be using a shared parking lot. They have to go through the process of having the special permits and everything like that. So what we're looking at is that necessary? Instead of having parking minimums, could we have parking maximums? Could we look at adding in transportation demand management techniques? So that businesses that are coming in, instead of having to provide 30 parking spaces, they could maybe only provide 15, but they're also providing bike racks, or they're also providing for their employees MBTA passes, things like that, so that there is a sort of trade-off. So while they sort of work in tandem, we don't believe that we're going to have the zoning, and they're not necessarily going to. They are sort of siloed. They'll work together, but they don't have to be done in tandem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just be cautious, because if you do one thing over there, while you're still looking at that, this can be, and as I understand it, as we saw in other cases, the zoning board of appeal often waives these parking requirements anyway. So if it's potentially better to bring consultancy projects in line, that they're ending up at the same time, that would be potentially something the planning division should look at, instead of making changes here and not be done with something else.
Sure.
No, and this is very important, and the fact that Aaron we didn't have staff to focus on this. And I think that very point of, we want to make sure that these things are integrated. We need to, and so, I think the good news is that's why they created this position within the Department of Planning and Land Management. However, because there's a planning component to it, but it does have to coordinate with our engineering division and the needs on the right of ways and things like that. So it's, this is an opportunity, and, if we didn't have it, you would really be at risk of just continuing to go without that kind of connection, so.
Yeah.
So Aaron, do you have any sense as to how many people have taken the RFP and are likely to respond?
So we know that, so we had to reissue it because there was a slight issue with the proposals that came back. Some people acknowledged the addendum and some did not, and we didn't want there to be any issues there. We had about 20 people, if I remember correctly, asked for the RFP. And we got 3 proposals, but I've already received several new asks this time around when we reissued.
Good questions, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that
There seems to be people that are interested there.
yes, we definitely have some interest. In fact, I had another company that said we didn't have time before, and we still submit this, while it's been reissued. I said, absolutely. If you have the opportunity, please do. So we're hopeful.
The question I have rattling around in my head, and I don't expect you to answer right now, is what will success look like 3 years from now?
Mm.
I'd love to know, have an answer to that question from not just you, but from the group. Because this is punching at clouds. There's so many pieces to it. Let's then talk about how do we articulate sort of something that we'll know we're at least got close to it, 2 or 3 years from now, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great segue to maybe bring Laura up to the table with me, because then we can talk about the long range. My other sheet. The long-term plans that the TAC has come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that.
I'm sorry,
excuse me.
so, yeah.
Laura Davis, 330 Garfield Road, Chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. Yes, I think we're neighbors. Yes.
Send her emails.
This is why we have these meetings. to get people-
All
Right. So I think most of what I was going to say has been covered. I mean, Alan, you did a great job of summarizing the history of the TAC and what we're all about. I think that, one of the things that we try to sort of parse out is like, we are, the community voices, we're trying to balance, competing interests within the community in terms of their transportation needs, We're thinking more about it from a transportation policy perspective, less from like a design and engineering perspective, which our staff are much more capable than we are. So we have focused a lot on public engagement, trying to understand what those competing needs are in the community. We participated in the sidewalk sale last summer. We just set up a table and we had some prompts and we were talking to people. That was very fruitful. We're going to actually be doing that again on Saturday. So I'll stop by West Concord on Saturday from 10 to 12 for the bike share launch.
Oh.
We're launching the Minuteman Bike Share, which is actually a collaboration between Acton and Concord. So we've been supporting some of the initiatives that have already come out. We were supporting the trolley last year, which was piloted. We funding is still to be determined about continuing that trolley. And then the bike share, and then we've had discussions about things. You brought up the parking minimums. That is something we've actually been discussing, and you know, we're definitely trying to take a holistic picture about how do all of these different pieces work together. You know, some of the outcomes that we've talked about having out of this comprehensive transportation study is to have a have a better prioritized list of projects that will help us achieve more interconnected systems that allow people to actually get around without a car. So trying to think holistically about prioritizing projects based on that priority. So we want to make sure that we have shovel ready projects that we can put out for grants when we have grants available, and make sure that we're doing that in a strategic way instead of an opportunistic way, which is how, you know, we've had to do it out of necessity for a long time. So we just are trying to take a more strategic approach to how do we get gaps connected? How do we, you know, meet the needs of various residents within the community?
Is your committee all volunteer? Are you all citizen volunteers?
We're all citizen volunteers, and Aaron
Yes,
Aaron
yes, yes.
holds us up
Right.
together.
Now, you can guess where I'm gonna go with this. My concern always with these groups is because you're dealing with such complex issues, important issues, is how we sustain the knowledge base going forward and the experience and the connections that you make, you and your team and your colleagues make over time. This is just an ongoing issue with complex public problems. And how, particularly when you're pulling together folks, and you'll develop expertise, you already have it. But what happens when you roll off this? You
Yes,
know,
absolutely.
not that you ever will, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Here for the long
Eh,
run. No.
but, I mean, this is just something that I hope the group will just be aware of, because if you lose 2 or 3 people, you just lose momentum.
Yeah.
You sustain, you know, just.
We've been very fortunate that the first chair so we were reorganized into the committee a year and a half ago, November of 2021. And we were fortunate that our first chair was Nick Pappas, who was involved in Envision Concord. So we started off with a lot of that institutional knowledge, and I think that's excellent advice, is, you know, figuring out how to bring new volunteers in, and cycling is very important.
Yeah, I think one of the things to keep that continuity in place is this idea of a complete street. It's a piece of it. Transportation is obviously much broader. But the complete street is identifying areas of need and conflict of some sort. And what may be, you know, a resolution. There's always a cost to it, design, construction. But we have a list right now of what was 53 streets or intersections or conflict points. And regrettably, the leadership as well as the consultants, there was no continuity. So we have a list, and we really are getting our arms around, well, what made it, you know, why was this list prioritized this way? So we're hoping as a result of bringing a third-party consultant in, they can look at this, they can help staff and committee understand. We kind of see where these are, help you with why are they, what would you do to prioritize? And then what kind of matrix would you have for new, you know, questions or conflicts that weren't identified? And so we're hoping, and we don't know what this is going to look like, but ultimately on an annual basis, you'll reevaluate this complete street, this list. And it may be that there's a project that Public Works was going to do or a need that dovetails with this particular intersection. So let's focus on that. Now it's, and that may adjust the prioritization. I'm hoping that the traffic management group will be maybe a first flush of anything, any new initiative or new inquiry. And there might be, is it a maintenance issue that we can resolve by, with staff? Or is this something which we really should identify and elevate to the TAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee, which can then look at it and say, all right, this is a legitimate need or initiative, let's capture it. So we know what it is, what the initial preliminary review might have been, and now that's just part of the catalog, and we don't lose it. And I think that may be an outcome, but I think we got to look at those opportunities of how do we keep this from, sort of the first shot of we had this major initiative and we're wondering now, well, how did we get here? Between staff, a new committee, and then public works and engineering, I think we're getting a little bit more of that necessary redundancy in some areas.
Mhm.
So I think, I don't know if that's, a
Yeah.
concept that we've been talking about within, and Steve Dukran, I don't know if you want to volunteer. Steve Dukran, town engineer, has done a lot on transportation as well, so he's familiar with these concepts. But his role responsibility doesn't allow him to sort of extend beyond, but having people like Steve at the table is going to be very helpful as we're building this system. Steve, do you want to offer anything, at this point?
No, make sure I get on record.
Yeah.
What I want to offer is that I haven't been introduced to Envision 2030. That's really a high level plan. And then we in public works, what we do, implement, we design and implement those plans. What we don't have, or we haven't had, is what happens in the middle. And that's where Erin comes in and the TAC and this study. That will help us, with a prescription for getting these plans in place. It's pretty much what I think. I look forward to see that happen.
And I can offer one in sort of concrete example of what Alan was talking about in terms of an identified safety need that goes beyond maintenance and then TAC, working to sort of understand it and be able to make more, policy oriented decisions about it. We're sort of piloting that and we're in the midst of that right now. The library brought up a long-term safety concern about crossing between the parking lot and the main branch library. There have been a lot of reported close calls there by staff and patrons. And so, this is beyond, we need to repaint the sidewalk or fill a pothole. It's really a question of like, how do we design something in an area where lots of people are on many different forms of transit, and how do we balance all of those competing needs of pedestrians and cyclists and drivers and the trucks that park at the library and all of the various interests that are there. So we just had a site visit to have that public engagement piece of it, to get an understanding from the folks who work there, what they've been observing, to make observations there ourselves. And then we're in sort of the process of debriefing that right now. And we're trying to take that as sort of a case study of how we might do this going forward. And then also how, this kind of work will, inform larger policy decisions that we might make about, certain applications like, this is not a good application for us as a town because of these reasons. And we are prioritizing, this other application instead because of a larger picture about what we want to prioritize.
I want to add to that. They had a case study last night at their meeting. It was on Sudbury Road and Stowe Street. And it's amazing. Just glancing through it,
That's what the library.
it's amazing how much has been done by the team and Aaron. They're looking at short-term solutions,
Yes.
medium-term solutions, and long-term solutions that, have a little bit of money, more money,
Yeah.
and major changes, maybe. But it was really impressive. So, I think just if when you have a chance, go to the TAC website, under the committees, go to Transportation Advisory Committee. You'll find out two things that were on last night's agenda. Click on one of them, and it's
48 pages.
okay. I couldn't tell you how many pages. It was quite a bit of stuff. So, you know,
I really like making slide presentations.
It was longer before.
I cut it down.
Yeah, but I think that, this is all to say that there's so much that can be done here in Concord, and I think that we hear, every day we get phone calls from people saying, something's wrong with this roadway intersection that we don't quite know, but it's not functioning properly. And there's very little money, there's practically no time sometimes. So we have to really be thinking about, how can we prioritize and how can we take examples like the crosswalk at Sudbury and use that to sort of say, okay, what are the best practices that we can use here in town? Can we take this case study and say, okay, this worked here, could we apply this to other areas? Can this be sort of a prescription that we can use in different spaces? Sort of use it as an example, and then we can sort of build off of that. Because once we have 1 or 2 success stories, then we can really sort of look at, okay, we know that this has worked in this one place in Concord, as opposed to picking someplace in Florida that will have completely different conditions. And we don't want to do that. So I think that it's sort of a, short, small steps that we've made in a relatively short amount of time that I think will serve us well in the long term. And I think that we'll really be able to build upon that once we have this comprehensive study of what we have in town already and where we can really sort of see the build.
And how can the commission play a role here, supporting you, DPW, and
That,
this?
well, awareness is step one. This is the introduction, knowing that this exists. Again, this was an orphan concept. Now it's got a home, and understanding there'll be some back and forth. It's really for staff to work, and it's good to have a staff member, just like you have staff members who can kind of help, facilitate. And I think it's just better being, sort of ready and available for, the conversations when it's appropriate. And, I think will help Public Works, knowing these issues are being addressed and what they are, and it's the awareness. And then when there's the opportunity to sort of support, provide input, there always, that's what we'll be talking about a little bit later on how to coordinate between not just departments, but committees. And, we've talked about chair, breakfasts or what they've become from different committees. That's an opportunity for chairs to talk and keep you sort of posted and abreast of what's happening. And so I think that's just the nature of the, how we're trying to make it work, and it's to be determined. But, I think this is step one.
Just one final question for me. So in the past, when citizens had a traffic safety concern, they went to the traffic safety officer at police. And there was some kind of a complex process from there on, which often, I don't know, citizens never heard back from this again. So how is this now consolidating some of that? Is the information that's ending up at the traffic safety officer ending up at now your desk? Is how are things coming together on information, and how are processes then made perhaps easier or someone closing the loop with the respective citizen?
Sure. So it hasn't completely changed in that
Yeah.
people are still reaching out to the safety officers or to engineering or to me now as well. And we bring that to the traffic management group. And what we do there is we decide, is this something that can be done, quickly and in-house? Is it something like filling a pothole, or the need to, like the crosswalk needs to be restriped? Okay, do we have that in the contract for this year? Or is it something that's sort of a larger discussion that needs to be brought to the community, and then that would be brought to the Transportation Advisory Committee to have a larger discussion and say, okay, is this something that we feel that we can deal with? Can we bring other experts from town staff in to sort of talk to us about it and sort of have that larger discussion? I think we've had a couple of things that have come up that have gone to the Transportation Advisory Committee that were a little bit bigger than the traffic management group wanted to handle. And I don't think that any of them have been resolved, mainly because we're trying to, a lot of them are going to be ending up on this list of priorities because they are larger design projects that we don't feel that we have the tools yet to tackle.
So one improvement, just don't leave the respective citizens in the fog.
Mhm.
At least let them know people are working on it or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna test Aaron McCloskey, Highway Ground Superintendent, who is also on the traffic management group. Aaron, if you want to come up, because these issues are sort of identified regularly with the PMG, and Aaron, maybe you can add some perspective.
Absolutely. So I've been on the traffic management group for about 4 years now. And it's myself, representatives from engineering, public safety. And, Erin's been involved since her appointment to her new role. So the way that we track individual requests, complaints, comments, so like Erin mentioned, there's a lot of avenues that people can take, right? When people need help, they go to the town website and usually the first name of the department that's relevant, they'll click and send us either an email, they'll call the front office, they might walk in. So there's a lot of different avenues that we collect information. All those are stored in a smart sheet that's available to all of us that are involved in the groups. We track resident name, address, contact information. And then, we collectively talk about the item, the issue, and one of us is designated to follow up with that resident. Resident will either get, usually we like to document everything just in case it doesn't get lost. And it's usually an email or a certified letter that gets sent out to the resident, and we track how and who and when it was communicated back to them of what the resolution was going to be. If it's a work order that's assigned to my division, maybe it's a study that is assigned to engineering, or something that's a long-term planning that Aaron's doing, or if it's a public safety initiative like directed enforcement through police department. All that's tracked and then eventually closed out once it's resolved.
Thank you, Aaron.
That's important to know. Thanks. I have a quick suggestion, which is someone should create a chart of these different groups: traffic management group, traffic. Any group that has the word traffic or transportation or future in it, and put them on a map. I'm really serious about this, because I'm sitting here as your classic citizen, trying to absorb and understand the relationship between them. And you already know this, I'm sure, but I don't. So it would be good to have a map a little bit. And this group, like what Aaron just described, is responsible for X. You guys, this is your territory. I don't, just a thought. That would be helpful to educate, because you'll find citizens will quickly get swimming in who's doing what.
Okay.
The only thing I'll add, I do think there are lots of places to overlap with the committee, just going back to your question about how we work together. I mean, things that have come up in our conversations that overlap. Winter maintenance has come up in our conversations, and we'd love to collaborate with you on reviewing our winter maintenance policy as it relates to the multimodal aspects of getting around Concord. And then obviously funding is always finding the funding to do, especially more comprehensive and visionary projects, is a challenge. So we definitely want to be collaborating with the committee on with Public Works on that. There was one other thing in my head, but I'll leave it at that. I can't remember what it was.
Okay, well, it's the beginning of a conversation. Yeah, so
Thank you very much for coming in, for your good work.
good, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's- to be closer.
You want to,
So we can hear you.
So now we're going to turn to item National Park Service, wayfinding signage and request.
All right, well, I will introduce Steve Dukran again, town engineer, who sort of brought this issue to, my attention and to the Public Works Commission attention. Steve, I believe you can maybe give us a little preamble, and I believe Margie Brown is also available.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. Good afternoon. So Steve, maybe you can kind of take the
Sure.
lead and explain why we're here and what we're discussing and what the role is.
So this is a rather simple request. And it's based on a bylaw that we have that's called the private digging streets of roads. And so for any work happening within this right of way, the public right of way, the law allows that this commission designate staff to permit that work. But when it comes to having a permanent installation of an improvement or feature within the right of way that is not town owned, then we have to deny it, except if we bring it for your approval, then it can be installed, put in place. And you've seen it, members have been on the board for some time, seen where we have come before you for putting in like a private sewer connection or irrigation. 2 years ago, we came for a wall within the right of way, a stone wall within the right of way. So in this case, we have an pre-existing 2 signs owned by the National Park Service, and they want to replace them as part of a bigger project that I'm sure Ms. Brown is going to get into. And we don't have a record of those signs existing or being permitted by the town. So this is our opportunity to have that on record, and we'll continue to build that non-town asset, the ones that I mentioned before, the stone wall and so on. And so going in the future, people can keep track of what is towns and what is not towns. And also with an approval like this one that we're about to get, it puts the obligation on the owner to do the maintenance of these items. So because it belongs to them. So anyway, we can hand it over to Ms. Brown.
Sure. Ms. Brown, do you want to sort of provide the commission a little overview of the project and how these fit in? Just might be helpful.
Yeah, would you like me to do a screen share?
Sure. If we can, let's see how we set this up. Share screen. Can you share the screen?
Okay. How's that?
We can see it. Yep.
Okay, so we are in the middle of a pretty major project at the park. We received several $1 million through the Great American Outdoors Act. One of our projects is to do a comprehensive sign update. And if you've been through the park or even through Concord Center, you'll see that a lot of the signs are failing. And in particular, our boundary signs. And so we wanted to replace as many signs as possible before the 250th anniversary in 2025. But we have over 300 signs. So we had to be very selective with which signs we could get replaced in time. And we selected our boundary signs as a priority. There are many Park Service signs as you pass through Concord, but those smaller signs will not be upgraded until we complete a comprehensive sign plan, knowing that we need to communicate with the town about signs that are not on Park Service land, but our National Park Service signs. So it's actually great to have 2 phases to this project because we can kind of work out all of the compliance in this first phase. So we are just going to be talking about 2 boundary signs that are on Town of Concord roads, Lexington Road and Old Bedford Road. If you've been down, you've been past these signs hundreds of times. Here are pictures of the current signs on the left, what the new proposed signs will look like in the center. And then I just listed the addresses of each location. So the upper one is a little hard to give an address to, but it is across the street from 663 Lexington Road, and it is within the American Mile Historic District. The second sign is pretty close to a Park Service owned house at 55 Old Bedford Road, and that is outside of the historic district. So here are some of the specifications for the replacement sign. It will be of new updated materials. It will actually be an aluminum sign. It will be on wooden posts. And here's another diagram of what it would look like. I think one thing that would be helpful for discussion is the height of the sign. You'll notice that the current signs do not adhere to the current height standards. And here it does adhere to the height standards. It will have breakaway posts. And then here are just some of the more details of the sign itself. And again, this is what the sign looks like now. And so it is not viewable under the sign. And here's the other one that's on Old Bedford Road. So that's what I wanted to share, and I can stop sharing unless you have, does anyone have questions about the images?
Question about the height. I couldn't hear what you said about the height of the sign of the new sign.
Yeah, so notice that the current sign is it's about 1 foot to 2 feet off of the ground. But current roadside standards are 60 to 78 inches off of the ground. So basically, if you have a roadside sign, you want to be able to see under it as if it were near an intersection. If there were an oncoming road, it would be very important to see under the sign. And so in this instance, where it's not near an intersection, we basically need to communicate with those who are involved with the sign compliance on whether we can lower the sign so that it's more in character with what we have.
So is it going to be higher in the end? Is it going to be higher than the current sign, the top of it? Is it going to be taller than the current sign?
Well, that's open for discussion. Again, let's take a look at what the current height is. There's the current sign.
Yep.
And here's a diagram of what complies now with roadside sign standards.
Okay.
And to be clear, so Steve, this was reviewed by engineering. You know, I imagine, you know, there were some comments and with the detail. So obviously, as Ms. Brown mentioned, this part of its historic district, so they've had some involvement, I don't know what, but obviously, you know, and their interests are a lot of, you know, details. Don't know the outcome of that. Steve, is from the engineering and public works side, what's
Right.
our take?
So there are a couple of considerations when we're dealing with engineering side of things. The first thing is if the sign is within what we call the clear zone from the vehicular travel lane, then the sign has to have the breakaway post. So in other words, if it gets hit, it's got to break. It can't resist, right? So they're complying with that. We have not seen an issue with it blocking sidelines. So I didn't think we addressed, but we had to address the height issue. So Ms. Brown, I don't know if that's that came up. I had staff review it, but that wasn't brought to my attention that was an issue.
And does the historic district have any comments? Would be interesting to know, you know, with the review.
I can provide that update. And they responded that because it is within parkland and it is within our historic district as well. As long as, you know, we've completed compliance, including we'll be doing shovel test pits at the time of installation. So basically they deferred to us and so.
Okay.
One question. There's a second sign underneath it with the please observe speed limits.
Yeah, we're getting
Will
rid of,
that piece still be there or?
no, it's kind of dated, and some of them limits has, it gets into the grass sometimes. So some of them say like, please observe speed or please speed, and that's just going away, unnecessary. I think you can even see the lower example, it's pretty faded.
Any other questions?
So, just for clarification, what is being proposed is what was included in the packet. This issue with elevation, I just want to clarify, what is the request, so the commission understands what it is that they're being asked to
Yeah,
approve.
so my feeling is, seeing that it may not be an issue, the sign height. It probably isn't a consideration that you have to review, because why it's here, it's because of its placement, its location.
So because it's in the public right of way, you need us to say it's
Right.
okay.
Now, and we can work out the height issue, but Mr. McCloskey wants to add something.
Are these the only two signs that are being replaced that are in the public right away? Because there are some smaller wayfinding signage that are installed on town posts.
Could you hear that? So, Aaron McCloskey, Highway Ground Superintendent, is asking if these are the only two signs proposed for replacement, noting that there are other smaller signs in the area that, the question is,
They're in need of replacement as well.
well, as Aaron's identifying, there's a need, is this part of the plan, or is this a future plan, or where do they fit into this improvement project?
Yeah, so we do have about 300 signs in the park, and our goal is to replace all of them, which requires a comprehensive sign plan. So that has been issued to a contractor. They've completed the first phase, which is an inventory of all the signs, and they're just starting the second phase where they will actually design the signs. So we'll be back in touch as we have more of our new signs designed, any that are either within the town of Concord and not on Park Service land, we will bring to the town, and any that are in the right of way. We will also, so this is just two signs, because these are two signs that will be replaced prior to 2025. We can't get all of our signs replaced by 2025 because we need this comprehensive sign plan, and there are so many signs that need to be replaced.
Okay, we have a motion here to, is there any comment, any more questions, comments? Anybody want to make the motion? Or shall I?
What is the
motion? I, David DeLong, hereby make a motion to approve the National Park Service's request to replace wayfinding signs located on Lexington Road and Old Bedford Street, detailed in a letter to the Concord Historic District Commission dated March 21st, 2023, and an accompanying memorandum prepared by the Engineering Division to the Public Works Commission dated April 4th, 2023. And the second.
I would like the second. Oop.
Second, any more discussion among the commissioners? I'd like to vote, please. James Terry. Aye. Sven Weber.
Aye.
Jeff Vassar.
Aye.
Andrea Solomon.
I
David DeLong says aye. Passed. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll be
Thank you.
back in a few months.
Okay, good
Take
luck
care.
with the 298 signs. Jeepers. Wow. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Now we move on to town meeting.
Let's see, do I have the right, is town meeting prep and review of articles presented by Director Cathcart.
So I will excuse myself.
There yet? Why don't you stay for a while?
Stay for a while, then we'll, so just wanted to sort of.
Give me a heads up and then. I will-
Preamble. Thank you.
Correct. Okay, so in essence, I just want to report back because you know, it's a lot of new
Yeah.
members here, but as Jim sort of goes through that history. Oftentimes, there's a number of articles that are directly relating to public works, some of them which we have sort of championed. In this particular town meeting, the majority of articles that we have an interest in, or Public Works Commission would, have been considered routine or non-controversial. And rather than belabor sort of what these are, you know, very quickly, they relate to our enterprise funds. We've had hearings, they've gone to the FinCom. It's the water fund, sewer fund, sewer improvement fund, the solid waste fund. These have been identified as both routine and non-controversial and hence have been put on this consent calendar. And this is a recommendation through the FinCom, where they basically, it's a matter of sort of order of business of town meeting. When articles have been vetted and there's not additional interest to, you know, have further deliberation, they are put on the consent calendar to be voted on en masse, so that it's a kind of housekeeping measure at town meeting to allow those articles of greater interest and deliberation to occur. So our work, at least as far as the need to present at this point, has been greatly reduced. I would say the following, that if there are 10 people at town meeting who decide they want to pull an article, they do that, and that's a process that goes through at the beginning. These articles will not be heard, likely at this, meeting, but we'd be prepared to work with the commissioner. If an article were pulled, we need at least one commissioner present, and they would generally present on behalf of Public Works. So they'd have to sidebar with me, and we'd have sort of a 3-minute presentation. It's highly unlikely because it's just there none of what we've sort of identified to date is drawing significant interest. So just want to bring you up to speed on that kind of housekeeping matter. There is one article that has been brought to my attention and awareness that is been considered is a citizen petition. And hence, I think we do want to have that discussion and deliberation as we've sort of outlined. And I think, given Sven Weber is the citizen who has authored the petition, he's going to recuse himself from the rest of this deliberation. And Dave, it's kind of up to you as far as how we want to handle it.
And has agreed to take an audience seat and remove himself from the discussion. I need some help though, understanding
Okay, let me go. I'm going to bring up on
the actual.
share the screen and see if I can't bring up the red line. Okay, so in essence, just to recall, sort of set the table, there was an initial proposal of 2 articles that were introduced that related to noise. And one of them is this was Article 37. Article 36 was to propose modifications to what is known as the construction noise bylaw. That has subsequently been withdrawn. So the focus is Article 37, which is based on the hearing and some follow-up discussions with some of the stakeholders who are concerned about the language. There has been a proposed amendment to the article, which is at this point likely to be moved at the town meeting. And what we've heard in both the hearing that was in front of the select board, because it's in petition to her to the select board, was an interest, and it was partly because of the noise bylaw, Article 36, which really drew Public Works in. But in all fairness, Public Works is also involved in the community with activities that do necessitate the use of this equipment that is being sort of proposed for both, sort of eliminating over time. And so what I have done is in the packet provided some description of the potential impact on Public Works, which is important for this commission. That's why we're here. But also there is, and likely I've identified the need for the community to understand that Public Works is not captured in it. And it's based on the specific language and of the revised article. But there may be a question on, well, if private or commercial companies are impacted, what about Public Works? So I think there's going to be a question on the commission. What is the commission's feeling? And because we have, sort of potential overlap, I just thought it warranted this, not a discussion at the town meeting, but here. And I'm willing to answer any questions. I think we provided in the packet some comments that were received in the bridge, and I think they all speak for themselves. There are, those we know for, historically been challenged with noise created by these two-stroke, sort of gas-powered handheld leaf blowers. And I think it's, just up to the commission to sort of deliberate. And I think, a recommendation would be to at least speak as far as one voice at town meeting, if possible, as far as where the commission would stand if it's asked. So that's where I'm saying it merits a position.
So the revisions here are, I'm so sorry. The markups are changes or amendments.
The red line, and what you see in purple, underline, is sort of revisions, and part of it, just to sort of walk you through it, is two things. One is identifying that it's on residential properties, so it's targeting that, it's specific on a certain scale of less than 1.5 acre. There was discussion on large parcels of land that require sort of significant attention. So that was a adjustment. There is the effective date. I think part of that is to extend when these would be impacted by commercial landscapers, and part of it is to allow for sort of the transition into the newer equipment. There's a discussion, and you've read about as far as, does the equipment today actually meet the same needs as far as the electric battery powered versus the gas powered, and there's been a lot of discussion on that. So I think there's an allowance to extend from what was 2025 to effective date for 2028 for the commercial landscapers, and then March 15th, 2030 for use of gas powered handheld leaf blowers by residents. So extension of the dates, the provision on residential properties and scale, and then the definition is clarification, just to realize that handheld leaf blowers mean different things to different people, and a lot of the noise is accompanied with larger backpack type systems. So I think the clarification is to include and make sure those are also sort of captured in this motion.
So does the definition not include the backpacks?
So I mean, any fully portable blower device designed for landscape with a handheld nozzle. So if it has a handheld nozzle,
Okay.
that's the trigger.
Gotcha, okay, so it would, okay.
So we're being asked to support or not support this in a way?
It's basically, we've got a lot of questions from how is this going to be, what does Public Works think? And
Okay,
so I've been asked, and I've spoken on behalf of the staff, but I don't speak for the commission.
because I think we all understand why Public Works we couldn't abide by this, because the expense of replacing all our equipment, all our blowers with electric blowers, we just couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford the staffing that it would take, because everything's gonna take longer. These jobs will take so much longer if you're switching out batteries. I don't even know how many batteries per day you'd need to get a job like blowing out a park done, or any of the buildings that they are maintaining. But we're being asked to, I can't support it for anyone, because I can't ask anyone to do that. I can't ask landscape companies to go out and replace in just a few years all their equipment with electric blowers, that they're gonna have to purchase batteries, which probably cost a few $100s at least a piece, so that they can use them all day long. It just seems like if we can't do it, how can we expect a small company to do it?
Have you done any estimates on the impact? Well, say, first of all, the dates for the first item, the first paragraph. Use of gas powered on residential property less than 1 point. What's the date of that being put into effect?
Immediately.
Is it
As
this
soon
year?
as the bylaw,
That's
as
how
soon
I
as the
read
bylaw
This
is passed and that
That would be, okay,
the
okay,
state approves it.
okay. Then secondly have you done any estimates of what the cost would be to DPW of this amended version of the,
would be zero,
okay,
because this,
For 5 years.
for 5 years, yeah. So to understand that this is, Public Works is not, we don't do residential properties.
right.
We
yes.
are not a commercial landscaper.
Yep.
So we are not included, as I read this. Our operations would not be affected directly.
Ever.
That's how I read this.
Okay, one of my questions was gonna be the commercial. I mean, let's assume that there are people in town that think that the town should do it by 2028.
Yes,
If we're on the Public Works Commission in 2028, and I won't be, and some of you might not be either. But if the town doesn't think that there's equipment that is appropriate, then I would suspect that the Public Works Commission would be subject to putting a motion, an article on the town agenda for the town meeting to amend those dates further
why?
to 2032. Knows if the town, if the feeling was that the town had to be considered a commercial landscaper or whatever, and had to have no gas blowers in 2028. And we didn't feel that, and staff didn't feel that there was appropriate equipment. I would I'd put an article on town meeting to amend this bylaw if it gets passed. To change the dates.
Okay,
So, I think the petitioner, we know who the petitioner
yes,
he heard the comments that were made by people who, in fact, are the commercial landscapers who don't have the ability or want
right,
to get equipment that is as good as what they've got now.
right,
The reason I think this is being put, there's two reasons: noise and pollution.
Mhm.
And certainly gas-powered equipment has less noise and a lot less pollution.
less,
No,
excuse me,
battery
no,
power.
you don't mean
Ba-
that, you don't mean that,
Batteries have a lot less,
yes,
electric would have a lot less pollution
Correct.
yes,
than gas does.
Until you go to dispose of those batteries. That's a whole nother issue.
No,
is it appropriate?
batteries are gonna be replaced. and they're gonna be reused.
Is it appropriate? I'm asking sort of a point of order for me to invite the petitioner to comment on, no,
I don't think so.
no, okay.
No. I have some
Why don't
questions.
you ask
Dave.
our
Okay,
questions and we see.
Okay,
Yeah.
because there may be some points of clarification. I'll come to you, I'll promise. There may be some points of clarification around our understanding of these issues, like around pollution, noise, the sacrifices people are gonna have to make. I have a very different take on this. And I have great respect for the department.
Mhm.
And I just think there are decisions we have to make in life that are going to be inconvenient. And if we think we're going to begin to, as I understand the implications, and this, by the way, directly affects me, it's going to make my yard messier because I use or have commercial landscapers using gas powered. But I think if it's inconvenient for me and costs me more or costs them more, it's too bad. We have to make choices in our society about things that are going to be inconvenient for us and cost some more if we're going to save this planet. And this is just a nothing request. This is my own personal bias. I see I have no motion about it. I would, and I welcome your inputs. Please, yes, Jeff.
So getting back to what Jim was saying earlier about if it came a point where this was being applied to public works, I mean, it would be an amendment at that time anyway, Jim, correct? And at that point, the amendment could include new dates. Would you agree?
Say that again. We're trouble hearing you.
Yeah, Jeff, say that one more time, please. Yeah.
Okay, let me
It's
try to
not
get
you. it's
louder.
people.
Okay. Jim was talking earlier about if this came up at a future point and to be applied to public works, we could amend the date in which it would kick in. But if it came up to it at a future time to be applied to public works, that would be an amendment in and of itself, I'm assuming. And at that point, that amendment could reflect whatever dates may be appropriate. Is that correct?
I think so. At this point, I gotta be very clear that my interpretation is public works is not, our
Right.
operations would not be impacted.
Right.
So that's very clear. So,
Right. So if they were impacted, it would be an amendment that would have to have its own.
yes,
language.
correct. The
Yeah.
red line would have to be further amended to include public works, correct?
I think regardless of this article or not, what is the town's opinion on use of gas-powered equipment overall? And they may not have a policy at this point, but over the years that may evolve so that the public works use of any equipment that requires gas or diesel may evolve over time as technology and other things improve. I think it's more appropriate to deal with any public works use of equipment as part of a town policy on the use of such equipment, not do an article like this. So I was just wondering, I mean, that's my opinion. Plus, I was wondering if the town has a position on becoming more sustainable through less use of gas-powered equipment over time.
All right, so that is a issue which deals with sort of the town sustainability goals and
Right.
and processes. Public Works, is part of the town, but we have our own sort of unique role and responsibilities. We are operation centric.
Mhm.
And, we do adopt some of these principles, for instance, the electrification, fleet electrification. We're
Mhm.
taking a leadership role when it comes to fleet electrification where it's possible. And in this particular case, we've got some light trucks, passenger vehicles that are all electric because that's what the town wants. I
Right.
think it's important for the commission to understand the town control, Public Works Commission has a lot to do with the operations of public works. And our practices are we adopt sustainable practices and equipment whenever and wherever we can. That's our goal. That's what we do. That's part of my role as the director and working with the town sustainability. So, and we will continue to do that. You know, we'll be ahead of the curve. This is a article for town meeting that affects all, you know, residents and commercial operations. And the impact is significant. It's not the first time this has been discussed. It's the first time it's actually getting to the floor of town meeting. And I think the issue became because of both Article 30, the petition, Article 36 and 37, Public Works was engaged because of the noise construction bylaw. But at this point, I think it's clear there will likely be a question because we've been asked, where does the Public Works Commission come in? And I think in this particular case, let's be clear that the Public Works can go on its own agenda, independent, whatever the town wants, and we will. I mean, that's just how we operate. When I say on agenda, we will be ahead of the curve when we think it's appropriate. And we do that regularly. But in this case, we're in a position of simply offering the following, that the technology that exists today would not allow us to do the same level of maintenance as the communities come to expect when it comes to this particular tool. And I think that's important to say at the scale and the level of work that we're involved with. That's all we have to offer is staff. You know, the issues of noise is real. The environmental, you know, impact is real. And, you know, I think that's what's for the community to decide, how does it want to manage itself? I think that's really, you know, the issue.
Yeah, you said it much better than I did, Alan, but that's
So
the point I
you-
was getting at. It was that the town needs to take a lead on what equipment it thinks is appropriate to use. And as you said, Public Works tries to be cutting edge and looks at these things and makes adjustments when it's appropriate to do so. That would be my response if someone asked that question at town meeting.
Nice. You guys have any other comments or responses?
I would just like to say that the reason why Public Works wouldn't want to adopt this is because the technology and the equipment is not up to par yet. Do I have that right?
For the scale of work we do,
Right,
correct.
so how would that compare to like a small business landscaper who has to do like 20 yards a day? I mean, how are they gonna keep up with the amount of batteries and equipment they would have to replace?
They may have to provide a different service.
That's easy for you to say,
Yeah.
right? That's their livelihood, that's their company, that's how they make a living.
Right.
And these are really short timelines. We also have, there's also an incentive overall for everyone to want to use more of the electric blowers because it does, when you're using it, you breathe in a lot less gas and it's somewhat quieter. They're not quiet. They're still make noise. I still hear them. But eventually, as the technology catches up, the power increases, you can use it on a longer charge. That's the way people are going to go. I mean, I would say if you really want to incentivize the use of this stuff, start looking at the ban on sales like California did. Instead of making people repurchase equipment they already have that they probably can't afford to do. And when you really look at the cost of the amount of batteries that would be needed to do a full day's job for some of these landscaping companies, you're going to put them out of business if you vote yes on this. And I think that it's really easy to say, well, just find another thing to do in life.
No,
But I can't say that
No.
to somebody. I cannot say that to somebody. I don't think it's my place to say that to somebody, and I wouldn't want that power. I also have a problem with, like, the town is going to be enforcing this. So you have a town department that can't do this, but the town's going to enforce this when people call up and complain.
Can do this.
If the town adopts this,
Yes.
what happens when your neighbor's using a gas powered blower and they're not supposed to be? Then what do? We call the police.
Right, yeah.
Oh, and then are we gonna call the police on the landscaping companies that are doing it? And who's working for the landscaping companies? we're gonna call police on young men, probably young men of color. To enforce this. This is just, there's so much more to this than like, I don't want to hear the noise and I don't want the pollution. I think individually, we should all go out for our own households and buy electric blowers. That would be great. But when you're putting that ban on a business that could then go out of business because of it, that's a huge responsibility to consider. And it is a responsibility.
I'm not convinced they'll go out of business. Because.
I think you haven't heard from them that.
What? No, I haven't.
I don't think you've gone out and talked to these landscapers then about the cost that they will incur if they have to buy this. I would say, why not make it for the for residents have to use the electric leaf blowers sooner and give the landscapers longer, like till 2033.
Right. Is it appropriate? Am I allowed to invite audience members or public to speak or everybody? Can I open this up now to, is there anybody
Does
online?
the
who
commission,
wants to speak?
have you heard from all the
We'll come back,
commission?
And I
Yeah.
certainly will come back to the
Sure.
commissioners, but.
I just want to clarify something.
Go ahead, yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
We're not being asked whether we support this article or not, are we? We're being asked how to respond if someone at town meeting says, should this apply to public works also?
Are we asked to take a vote? Is there a vote in that
Well,
script?
Well, we're
Yes.
basically,
There is a vote. on
there's a
paper.
position that Public Works needs to be prepared to respond to the question of what is
Right.
Public Works' position? And so, and I think as far as what's on the table for that is that you would abstain as a group to have a position. You would oftentimes, there'd be a recommendation, to take no action, which means do not, sort of vote this, support it. Or you would ask, or you might want to offer affirmative action. And what we have to do is be clear that this is routine town governance kind of back and forth. And I just want to be very clear, and I appreciate, this is an emotional, very, highly charged topic. We know that. And so everybody's entitled to an opinion, but as a commission, I think the real issue is, and there's going to be an interest from the community, what's your position? And there could also be a statement too. And I'm not sure, Mary, it could simply be a statement that the commission wants to, offer.
Right,
But-
I'm sorry. I know we have
Yeah.
at least one citizen who wants to.
Yeah, my name is Mary Hartman. I'm on the select board, and to your question earlier, the select board often solicits input from the public before we vote on something. So especially something that's controversial or high interest. So this is perfectly okay and normal to ask for public input. So as a member of the public, since this article is silent on the effect to DPW, I would think that it might not be even appropriate for this board to vote up or down. As individuals, you could certainly go to town meeting and from the floor of town meeting, express why you support this or why you don't support this. But as far as the commission, since it has no direct impact on DPW, a statement is fine because people are naturally going to ask. But a statement is different than an up down vote. So I'm suggesting that this commission need not make an up down vote, simply a statement how this is going to impact DPW. Especially since it's not going to impact DPW. So if it was with the noise bylaw, it was obvious that you would have an up down vote because it impacts you. But this is silent on that, so it doesn't impact DPW. So, and again, I don't want to, I think people have really strong opinions and they can be articulated on the floor of town meeting. So that's my.
And just to clarify, as individuals, not the commission.
Correct.
Exactly,
And so,
exactly.
Unless we took a vote,
unless you took a
Unless you
vote,
took a
correct.
vote. Right, so
which
you
we're
can,
pointing that toward.
right,
Can I ask how the select board voted on this?
well. We voted 3-2, but we will probably reconsider because it's been amended significantly. So some of the objections or reservations that members had against it have been addressed with some of these amendment. So yes, we did vote, it was 3-2
favor.
in favor, affirmative action. But I expect that we'll leave this.
I just want to point out too, I can't remember if we did this last time, but some of the information in this just. When you do talk to landscapers or even people from our own public works department. Like. It's sort of equated. Some of the language in here makes it sound like that electric powered are just as good as gas powered. That is just not the case. It's just not, the charge does not last if you use it, most of them on full power, it's gonna last like 20 minutes. I mean, can you imagine having to switch out a battery every 20 minutes if you're gonna be blowing for this property and that property, or doing, like, I watch the landscapers do the cemetery every fall, like, that's hours of blowing leaves. It just, I think this technology is going to catch up, and I think there's enough, there are enough reasons to adopt it as it gets better. And it will become, it'll be incremental. But first, the residents will get him, then the small companies will get him, then the big companies will get him, and then DPW will slowly acquire that equipment. But to ask people to toss out all the equipment they have that works still, that they paid for, that they have no way of getting money back, and then buy all new stuff, which is just so much more expensive, is a lot to ask in just such a short amount of time. 2028 for commercial landscapers is just, I don't even think that's reason. I don't even think it's possible. There's not enough batteries out there. They're not even making the batteries fast enough.
I want to acknowledge. Yeah, I think you should.
Just as the petitioner, few clarifications.
So let me just ask, if there is a decision not to take a vote,
Position.
not take a position, then I think it would be. But if you have to cross that first, if you're in and I think that might be something you want to find procedurally before you.
As a resident.
Before he is involved in discussion at all.
Yeah, and I think then it becomes just sort of informational, but.
I move that that the Public Works Commission not take a position on Article 37 as it does not affect public works activities. I would second that.
I was second.
Okay, so we'll just take a roll call. See if there's any discussion. Any discussion, Jeff?
I totally agree. I think we should not take
Okay.
a opinion on this.
Roll call.
Roll call, James Terry,
Aye.
Sven, okay, sorry, Jeff Bassett. Jeff Bassett.
Aye,
Andy Solomon.
I,
David DeLong, aye.
Okay.
So the commission has.
No, I just, again, still purely as a resident, just to clarify a few things, because things were said here on record that are in the recording and we perhaps need some clarification. The corrections were made with a 6-week-long process where I sat down numerous hours with landscapers, large resident owners, commercial property owners. Alan was hosting one of them, but I spent 6 weeks with numerous parties to go through the effects and what does it mean. Consequence was Article 36 was withdrawn. We made these adjustments, and do we please everyone? No, but we were doing a significant progress in addressing major concerns that were out there. Second, Lexington goes effective 2025, 26. The original timeline was exactly what Lexington is. We have 16 towns surrounding us that have already restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers. So landscapers have to make a change no matter what. Unless they say, oh, I'm not doing Lexington anymore, I'm not doing Belmont anymore, I'm not doing Annismore, I'm only doing Concord. So there will be changes for them. We give them actually more time, and the purpose is also that we can see, are there unintended consequences the moment, let's say, Lexington kicks in? Do we see something that was not foreseen? And there's enough time between 25 and 28 to make adjustments when we see that. The last point I want to make is with respect to cost. The runtime. So the two most powerful commercial landscape equipments right now run 90 and 140 minutes. And that's not on low power. And I have one of them at home and I can confirm the 90 minutes. Yeah, so it's not 20 minutes. Second, if we believe the numbers of the landscapers they put out in the Concord Bridge, and I in addition throw in replacing all batteries every 3 years and amortize that over the lifetime of the leaf blower and the batteries, I come to an effect of $4 per workday. This is not doubling but tripling the cost. It is an initial capital outflow. I acknowledge that. And one of the reasons to push it out was to ease that out. We know that the average lifetime of a leaf blower is something like between 5 to 10 years. If you do good maintenance, it's 10 years. If you do bad one, it's less. Somewhere in that time we have in front of us, these leaf blowers people have need to be replaced anyway. So these were measures that were done to make it easier. Just want to bring that on record.
Did you look at the difference between and the effectiveness though, and the ease in which businesses can switch over between banning the sale of them and banning the
So the
purchase?
town
of them?
cannot banning the sale, but again, is there at least 16 others around here, 200 nationwide. It is expected that 400 towns by the end of the year nationwide have restrictions on using them. So we are late, and we are 5 years behind our neighboring town. So 3 years plus 4 years. So we are pushing this far. The
Right,
changes will happen anyway.
they will happen anyway, and this technology will get better and people will want to buy it because it'll be more available and it'll be less expensive and everything will get better. I mean, we're seeing that with cars right now. I mean, the main reason people don't buy electric cars is no longer the cost, it's like they can't get it charged. That's the problem. So everything gets better because we try to, it's more available, but I mean, can I ask you why you decided to make the change effective faster for businesses than for people? Because it seems like it'd be easier for an individual to go out and buy an electric blower.
No, the individual electric blower has less usage, so the existing inventory lasts a little bit longer. Again, is Lexington has 25 and 26. Now they all have the same logic in there, and they, in a certain way, you can also say commercial landscapers have an ongoing revenue stream. They have.
They hope to have, yeah.
Yeah, but the
It's
residential doesn't have an ongoing revenue stream. And again, we pushed it out to make it easier from a financial impact. They would have to replace it anyway sometime over the course of the next years. And if you amortize it, the cost over the lifetime of a leaf blower, you are ending up at $4, and their own numbers, not the numbers if you calculate what is the market, on their own numbers of $4 per workday.
Did you have a question or a comment?
I just have a comment.
Comment.
After it's important, we're already taking a vote. I want to, but I would just make a note that I feel.
Aaron, do you want to come up?
Yeah,
We can hear you. Yeah. Just again. For the.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would just say, and I've mentioned this comment before, Aaron Boston, Highway Ground Superintendent, is that I don't think it's a fair statement that public works operations will not be impacted. I agree that they are excluded from the language, but a lot of what we do is customer service and administration. So we are answering phone calls, we are answering complaints, receiving suggestions, and a lot of the work that we do in planning that goes in for long-term projects is based on resident input and their requests and committees votes and those type of initiatives. And as these effective dates start to hit and the community sees that they are being restricted on what they're able to do on their private property, or business owners that are in town restricted on how they operate their business, but the local government that's enforcing the rules as an exclusion is going to create some animosity there, and there will eventually be reconsideration, I assume, of the language, and we will be forced to use the technology. So while I may not be happy now, sure will happen later. And at that same token and note that it creates, not all the calls that we receive are pleasant. And usually when there are, if there's somebody that's upset, it's an employee that has to, provide that customer service.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's a very uncomfortable conversation. And I can see that this is going to force and create a lot of those uncomfortable, unpleasant situations and interactions between town employees that are serving the community and some residents there, you know, not too happy with this. So I just want to kind of throw that out there as I see that happening, potentially.
Yeah,
So,
we've seen hostile interactions with other town employees that
Right.
should not have to deal with this, but
right.
it's happening more and more.
So I just want to make a note that we are impacted. I see that as a potential issue, so.
I think that's important to hear.
Yes, sir.
Robert, you'll see one of Central Street. I'm curious how many blowers you have at this point that fit this category.
We have a number. So we have a number of,
I mean, is it 5? Is it,
I'd say electric leaf blowers.
so I'm talking about gas powered.
Oh, gas powered leaf blowers. Probably between 15 and 20.
Okay.
That we use. We have a number of different types of pieces of equipment. You know, across the groups, we have highway and grounds, we have a water and sewer division that use them. We have a work crew from the prison almost daily. They have their own sets of equipment that they use that we provide. But we have, if you, any of you read some of the packet notes and Director Cathcart's comments to the bridge, we've implemented a lot of electric equipment over the last few years to try to you know, get ahead of an anticipated potential ban and implement those electric pieces of equipment, blowers, weed whips, mowers, vehicles, those kind of things. So we're doing our best to stand with it.
Thank you.
Can I also just ask you, so it's important for this group and it's as the practitioner, right? This is not theoretical. I can assure you my instruction to Aaron, anytime he's getting new equipment, especially small equipment, is do we have alternatives?
Is there?
I mean, that's the first, you talk about, and Jeff was talking about the sustainability principle. So Aaron, you just from a practitioner, you haven't gone there because, and this is, you know, you have the 15 versus the, how many electric we have?
Probably, we have. They're handheld type units with a backpack type
Yeah,
blower,
yeah.
our battery pack, excuse me, a handful of them.
Yeah.
Of blowers.
And you're not eager to buy more yet, and we're not keeping you, so the budget issue, and again, this is. Because the town wants what the town wants, we are not as restricted, we will go out of our way, and we know we might spend more, but it's what the town wants.
And I would say, so last year, at town meeting, the town authorized part of the budget, $1,500 or $7,500 park and tree, and another $7,500 for highway for small equipment. It's detailed for a lot of this kind of landscaping type of equipment, power tools used. We have a $10,000 purchase order that was just approved for a purchase of all electric landscaping equipment. So we'll be in receipt of that this spring and intend to implement that equipment this season. So
So,
that's kind of doing that ahead of this.
and as a statement, Public Works needs to know that staff walks the walk wherever we can practically do so.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can we?
Yeah, this is on wheels.
Yeah.
Mr. Weber, you can read us here. Can we move along here? I'm watching.
I'd like to suggest that we share, work with Alan to put together a statement. And maybe talk with Andrea too, so that we have that there's balance, if you will, as to what we say.
Sure.
So be ready at town meeting to make the statement.
Pardon?
Be ready at town meeting to make the public works statement
Okay.
if we're asked.
Okay.
If we're asked, then
Okay.
chances are that early on we'll be asked.
All right. I'm willing to do that. Are you willing to?
Yeah.
I don't, you don't have to.
No, I'll contribute to this statement. I would like to.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, moving forward.
Director's report?
Okay, we will go to, and I'm gonna ask staff to keep it brief.
Yes.
We're gonna go to, let's see if I can pull up the director's report, it's all here. Sometimes my Adobe times out and I don't know why.
Right.
I lose data. Not information. So Jeff Morosky, why don't you come on up? Jeff Morosky, Water Sewer Superintendent. Jeff, if you can keep it, just a few minutes, that'd be greatly appreciated. Important stuff, but
Two slides we have. First slide is focusing on our NAGOG surface water supply. We have a intake pipe and in 2021. There was a project put out to replace the pipe. Bids came in over budget. scale was reduced, and we ended up replacing a portion of that intake pipe with 16-inch HDPE piping, plastic piping. And the remainder of the intake was left for a subsequent phase 2 project. That phase 2 project was put out to bid this year, and the contract was awarded to, coincidentally, the same contractor that did phase 1. And this project is a rehab project, a cleaning and lining. It was approximately 1,100 feet that was replaced in phase 1. And we're looking at approximately 1,400 feet of cleaning and lining. The project is proceeding, knock on wood. The cleaning began with jetting of the interior pipe, and now the cleaning is going to transition to pigging, which is a different cleaning technique that's passing like a ball through the interior of the pipe, and it's pulled on a cable. And they use successively larger pigs to open up the interior bore.
If you go through a number of times.
Correct, and then they'll do a CCTV for quality control just to make sure that it's prepped and ready for lining, and then the contractor will bring in another subcontractor to do the lining installation. So the contract has a deadline date of May 1, and that's important because we're transitioning into high demand season of water, and we'll be looking to draw upon NAGOG supply to augment that high season demand. Next slide. And I have to apologize, we have a little bit of a typo here. I'm not planning to have a water main break on April 26th. We actually had a water main break in the early morning hours of April 6th, and it was on Monument Street. It was in front of number 93. That's this building structure right here. This was a 8-inch cast iron water main installed in 1927. You can see the defect. There were 2 side-by-side pinholes that released. It wasn't a significant break in the sense that we didn't see dramatic impacts to our water reservoir levels. And it was also quickly located and quickly replaced. I was surprised that my head of operations told me within an hour that it's repaired, and we're starting to recharge the main and backfill. So it was a very quick repair. Part of that's luck, part of it's the right location, the right type of break, and it was all suitable for a quick repair, and that's a repair clamp repair on the right-hand side.
Literally a mechanical Band-Aid is what it is.
But it's good for a long time.
It's good for a long time, yes. Well, Jeff's here. If anybody has any questions on the.
Yes, eye hydrants. Are more eye hydrants gonna catch these things quicker?
That's a good question, and we don't know the answer to that yet. We do have an install, as we talked about.
You're gonna buy a second one?
We ordered a second one, and the intention of the second one is to be installed within the Butternut Circle neighborhood, which is another project we've been talking about with the commission for over a year. We are just going through the process of a contract award right now. We're intending to locate one of those eye hydrants in that neighborhood, which will give us the northeast part of town. So we're looking to have installs kind of around the periphery of the distribution system, and then a handful of placements within the center of the system. With this install, and I don't mean to talk too long here, with this install, we see sensitivity of if street sweepers are filling their water from the hydrant in the back of the campus, or if we're doing vehicle washings, we'll see pressure dips at this, and we can pre-program high pressure and low pressure. And when it exceeds the high or the low, it would give us an alert signal. So that's particularly useful for that. And it could alert us to a potential water theft if something like that were happening out in town. Another thing is the Middlesex School is on our outskirts of the distribution system. The pressure might not help us there, but if we had a eye hydrant deployment out there, it also monitors changes in temperature. And that's a good proxy for chlorine residual. If the water is warming, then the age of the water is kind of getting old and the chlorine would be decaying.
Yep.
So it can help us to keep the water system fresh with a deployment like that. So we're considering placement locations.
I hate to do this, but. How frequently do you have to replace your hydrants? And how much more does an eye hydrant cost than a regular hydrant? Is it $100? Is it $1,000? Is it, magnitude?
I didn't have I wasn't prepared for that figure. A standard hydrant is approximately $3,800 to $4,000. The eye hydrant, I believe, is on the order of $5,000 to $5,500.
Okay, so
Ballpark.
So $1,500. But how frequently do you have to replace hydrants? Or do you replace hydrants? Let's put it that way.
They're relatively long lived. They would have to have a mechanical failure if there were a problem or if it was struck by a vehicle and we would have to do a replacement.
Okay.
We don't. It's a relatively new product out on the market, so you don't know the full lifespan. There are battery replacements that we can do, and there are maintenances that can be
Let
done.
me help here, a dozen a year would not be.
Okay, great. Okay, that's a good idea.
And the
Okay.
objective
So
is,
it's $1,500 times a dozen a year.
and the objective is not to have 300 eye hydrants throughout the system,
Sure.
but a
Strategically
percentage,
placed, yeah.
like 1 out of 20
Yeah.
hydrants potentially.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, Aaron. See what we can do. We got 5 minutes and 2 presentations. How's that?
3 seconds. All right, good evening, everyone. Aaron McCloskey, Highway Ground Superintendent. So we're transitioning from winter maintenance into our spring maintenance program. A big focus of spring maintenance is preparations for the April 17th Patriot State Parade annual event that's happening on Monday in town. Big part of that is sidewalk sweeping. So in this photo, you can see 2 different units: is a whacker loader with a sweeping broom attachment and a spray tote on the front of it. Being operated on the left-hand side is a demo of a new piece of equipment that we're going to be procuring. So the Ventrax unit, which is the actual tractor piece, with that part of the unit, is a piece of equipment we procured in the fall, and we use it for sidewalk snow plowing and maintenance. It's got a brine tank fixated on the front of the unit. It's got a spray bar to the rear underneath where the operator stands, and we use it for kind of what we call our hand route for narrower spaces, sidewalks that are narrower than the 5-foot clearance we need for a classic bombardier sidewalk plow to get through. Cambridge Turnpike, downtown areas, pinch points of large trees, things like that. Typically has a snow blower or a V power angle plow on it. And this has a power sweeper broom that we are demoing or in the photo and used successfully to sweep those areas. So we have a purchase order that's now open and procuring one of those to be implemented as part of our sidewalk sweeping program. We did some training. We've been doing a lot of training with employees on the left-hand side of the photo. Some of the trainings, employees in the training held in the next door. We had some stormwater training for employees who go out, kind of give them an overview of stormwater, how it's collected, analyzed, kind of mitigate any impacts of that, and potentially doing some training with our employees on testing stormwater, working with the engineering group. So engineering kind of helped to host the training, and all the highway staff attended that. On the right is one of our operators, actually a water sewer operator, working with our crew to vac excavate a catch basin. So we have a catch basin cleaning truck that has a clamshell type of device on it that goes down to the catch basin, cleans out the debris. We do an inspection. Some catch basins, we identify that they're not able to be, the debris is not able to be removed to the clamshell. So we work every Wednesday with water and sewer, work together and go around and vac excavate some of those units that need to be vac excavated. So we typically target a quarter of the catch basins every year as part of the program. We track them on GIS, and then we identify if they need to be rebuilt or if there's any issues, some type of odd debris in them, those things of that nature.
Everyone is cleaned out every 4 years.
Ideally, perfect world,
Okay.
right? That's our target. That's our
I
target.
was just looking in some of
Yeah.
the neighborhood.
Yeah, every 4 years. So, and some more as needed. So if we have areas that get a lot of debris for whatever reason, they might be at the bottom of a hill, cul-de-sac, something like that. It could be an issue where it doesn't drain well. If there's a broken pipe, something like that, might be more frequent.
And so there's a hand glove with engineering division who's responsible for overseeing our NS4 permit. And that deals with the stormwater, it's regulated. highway grounds, water sewer support by the maintenance and cleaning, of the infrastructure. And we've been working with automating and sort of capturing the data. So the question is, how much material is being removed? We then inform you to how often you need to go back. So, we're building this program, got a good group, and it's sort of said kind of hand glove with quality control into the environment ultimately.
I would also note, I'm using this opportunity to ask for additional funding for future years. So we have to, so all the sediment gets removed is considered kind of a hazardous material, right? So we stockpile that material at a site here in Concord. In order to dispose of it, it has to be tested, and then it is trucked to a disposal facility that's licensed to, permitted to dispose of that material. It's very expensive, and we do not budget enough. And so next year we will be asking for more money to dispose of this material. It's very important, otherwise it stays on site here in Concord. Same goes for all of our street sweeping material and debris that's collected. So we have street sweepings and catch basin cleans, which are very expensive to dispose of. And as environmental regulations become more strict, less and less facilities accept this material, which means it has to get trucked farther and farther away from Concord.
Why is that stuff poison or toxic?
But if all the runoff, if you think of all the other materials that are, whether it's oils, lubricants, chemicals, it could be in the roads, everything gets washed into the storm drains, right? And as the material in the water kind of evaporates, what's left is the chemicals and the debris. And so all that stuff's contaminated.
Wow.
It needs to be, can't just go to a landfill and can't just.
The materials on the tires that wear down, that's just, so it's. Thank you, Aaron.
Absolutely.
Wait,
We
you got
got a
one
couple
more?
more. Yep. So the compost site opened Saturday. It's open this evening for anyone who wants to, if you can get there in time. It's closed, sorry. But it's Wednesday evening, Saturdays. We're open seasonally now, accepting yard waste material. Residents can pick up screened compost and sand that's available. Photo on the right is the invasive dumpster. There's a new sign with instructions and what's collected in the invasive dumpster.
Becomes very busy this time of year,
Absolutely.
very busy. Then finally.
Photo on the left is one of our crew leaders, the mini excavator up at Sleepy Hollow, excavating. You can see a grave. So a lot of, we're very busy in the spring. A lot of folks defer interments until the springtime after the winter. So we're seeing an uptick in interments at Sleepy Hollow. And then on the right, more photos of Sleepy Hollow. Just some signage and some trees. Spent a lot of time up there. The tree crews up there doing some pruning, cleaning up, and getting ready for all the visitors will be coming to town this next week. And then in May is Memorial Day. It's a very, very busy holiday at the cemetery for us. So
A lot of activity over there.
absolutely.
All right, thanks, Aaron. I think we're good.
Thank you very much.
Steve Different, town engineer.
Yes, thank you.
You can,
Aaron got all the money.
well, you can ask.
Yeah.
This isn't the group.
I know. Reclining material gets into stormwater, big part of it.
Right, yeah.
So what we have here is some striping. We did some striping for the parade this weekend. And it's not all done. We have one more night. It normally takes 2 to 3 nights. We did 2 nights already. And so I wanted to make sure we are aware that this is not the ideal time for doing pavement markings, but it is part of the annual ritual of making it look presentable for the parade. All right.
Can I have one question on striping? So, again, I grew up in Germany, and Germans use kind of heavy, durable material. They're using really more kind of a thick striping, and they only have to go out, I don't know, every once in how many years to redo this stuff. Is there something we have to consider, because you have to go out so often, restriping everything, and if we change the material used or the kind of stuff used, that would be more durable?
We are aware, and we have used
Yeah.
some of those. The most common one would be the thermoplastic material. And it's supposed to give you 3 years. We have a few locations that we have used it. Sometimes the plow would pick them up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, but we have not put into practice alternative materials to any extent just yet. And there are some other materials as well that we will be applying for crosswalk. The Main Street, Walden Street project, that intersection, we'll be using a different material there. And we'll see how that performs. It obviously will cost more, but.
You perhaps should
Upfront.
test out a few things
Yeah.
and see if it works.
There's always the cost up front over the long term.
Yeah,
And that's what we need to look at, yeah.
If you drive on Lowell Road, you see that there's evidence of erosion. There's no drainage in the street to collect the water. So what happens is that there's a lot of water, it rushes down the edge of the street and erodes. So we're designing a project to collect that water and infiltrate most of it, with having a little bit of overflow. So that's in the midst of a design. So the next one, another drainage project over on Prairie Street. Today, at the end of the street, there's a catch basin that doesn't work and it floods out the location, gets on the Cousins Park and causes erosion there. So we're designing an improvement to that, capturing the water that plan shows in a new catch basin and then discharging it and treating it within the park. We've talked to NRC, they're on board because there's a sensitive area that no disturb zone. So they're on board with doing that. I wanted to add the message for drainage. These are just a couple of examples of a lot of drainage and stormwater needs we have in town under public works, responsibilities. And we just don't have enough funds, from Karen. We just don't have enough funds to deal with all of these. And we have a little bit for the current fiscal year, for FY24. The appropriations are even smaller. And that will lead into looking at a stormwater utility that we'll be trying to work on the next year. But so whereas we're going to design these projects, find out what they truly cost, and then make the case for real money to build these, as well as those that are on our list.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Any questions from the director's report? Any other?
I had a quick
Yeah,
question
please,
about
yeah.
1134 Monument Street. So is that determined to be in the right of way or not? The stone wall, they're still determining.
According to the surveyor said it's not in the right of way.
So then they can make the cut that they want for their driveway?
Well, however, the town planner has determined that the intent of the bylaw is met by having it go to the planning board under
Okay.
the scenic roads application. But it's what is important for us is that our right of way permit has no jurisdiction on that stormwater.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and we are certainly following these. That was the first, I would say, exercise, pre-promulgation of the final regulation, so. To be determined.
Any comments from the commissioners? Any other input?
Yes,
Yes.
a couple meetings ago, we talked about what other committees we might want to observe. I spent some time. Transportation Advisory Committee, the one that came today. They meet the second Tuesday of every month. Planning Board, which is sounds like you already watched them.
I watched them very closely.
Ooh, that would be fantastic, okay? There's the West Concord Advisory Committee. They meet at 7 PM, but their days keep differing. And 229 Main Street Oversight Committee, which is the first Tuesday of every month. Those are the ones that I think might have some public works impact. So if in the future months, if we can talk about, all you have to do is look at the agenda and figure out whether there's something that might be of interest to us or to you, and then you watch. And if you don't, you don't. So
I think it's a great topic for the next administration.
whatever.
And
I continue watching the planning board.
And I apologize, it was on our agenda and I apologize, I didn't flag that, but
That's all right.
Yeah, we could.
it's an
next
ongoing
time.
conversation.
Yeah.
and,
Yes, right.
That's helpful, Tim. So you said 2229 Main Street,
Yeah.
The TAC,
West Concord
West Concord Advisory.
and Planning Board.
okay. Excellent.
I sort of went through all of the committees and sort of looked at what they do, and most of them are farther away than those four. And even West Concord Advisory is different, but they're talking about Waters Pond and Commonwealth Avenue, and so those are things that affect.
And we are actively involved with a lot of design issues and support,
Yeah.
so. So thank you for that.
Okay,
Any other
So-
comments?
I move we adjourn.
Second,
James Terry,
Aye.
Sven Willard,
Aye.
Jeff Vassar,
aye.
Andrew Sullivan,
I.
David Delon, aye.
Okay.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.